Welcome everybody. Great to see you all again. So many familiar names now. I don't know if we have got any new people. Maybe one or two actually this week. But if you are new, welcome. My name's Roland Seddon. I'm Managing Director of MRK Associates. We're a revenue management recruitment business working across the UK and internationally. And we've been running this is our 9th in the weekly series of webinars to help people with their career planning and their thought processes. It's not been about trying to get people to move jobs. It's been, hi Lorenzo, it's been about trying to get people to think about how they can develop their career. So we've focused on all sorts of different things, from how to understand what gives you the most job satisfaction long term, the different cultures and types of industries that has the revenue management and how they differ, how to plan your career and the different options you've got in the directions to take. So we've and then obviously last week we did the how to build your own brand, and it's been really good actually in the last week to see a number of you putting your blogs out, putting posts out. I know Luca put a post on about having completed a Tableau analyst course. Rodrigo's put his blog out. Gabby put her blog out. So that was really good to see, and I would urge you to keep doing that, because it's it definitely will help with your brand. And don't forget to join the groups on LinkedIn and get involved with discussions and that sort of thing. So today we have week 9 is mental health, talking about mental health, and not be too hard on yourself in terms of when you're building your career. Careers have ups and downs. They don't go on a straight path, and it's easy to get down on yourself if you set yourself goals. So I've got a great speaker today called David Beeney, who is the founder of Breaking the Silence. I'll let him introduce himself because he does a much better job than I do. But David has spoken with all my staff online during lockdown. And to give you an idea, after listening to him, I had 3 of them come to me saying, can I please do some mental health sort of first aid training? Because we're going to try and make sure we raise the awareness of talking about this within our office and as a group. So I'm very confident David will keep you engaged and be really interesting today. Just to start with, before we get going, I always do the polls, as you know. So we've got a little poll today, which has come from David, to be fair. So how many people will suffer from some degree of poor mental health in 2020? What do you think the answer to that will be? 1 in 1 is everybody. 1 in 2, every other person. 1 in 4, 1 in 6. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 1 in 2 or 1 in 4. I'll let David comment on that in the middle, but pretty in a minute. So bang on in the middle. That really, you've got to say that's pretty. 1 in 3 should have been the answer for that, then, shouldn't it? So so the next one is quick. This one here, just to put this on you. How would you describe your mental wellness generally? I'm always on top of the world. My mind is normally pretty positive. I just get on with it. I'm up and down. Often find things difficult. I remind you, this is anonymous, so we don't know who puts what. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So spread across the 3. My mind is normally pretty positive. I just get on with it. I'm up and down. So I mean, I'm up and down. I think as lockdowns progressed, actually, I think we'll probably find that I'm up and down has grown as people have found it probably slightly more and more challenging, probably slightly, more and more depressing. But again, David, something there for you to probably, refer to as we go. So great. Thanks for that, everyone. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass the whole screen to David, and he can I'll leave him to you.
Thank you, Roland, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a real privilege to be your your speaker this afternoon for about the next 30 minutes. A little bit about me. I'm one of those people who had a fairly normal career working in media for over 36 years. Very normal career, reasonably successful, but I was hiding a dark secret. And that dark secret was that I was battling with my mental health with nobody having any idea whatsoever. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit now that not even my ex-wife of 28 years knew anything about it. Not my mates down the local pub, and certainly nobody I worked with had any idea that I battled daily with panic attacks and anxiety. Well, my whole life changed forever on the 16th of May, 2016, when I decided to out myself about my mental health and talk about it for the first time. And it's really changed my life, and it's changed my life for the better. When I first shared my mental health story, it resonated with more people and at a deeper level than anything I've ever done in my life before. However, and it's a really big however, many people came up to me and said, David, thanks for sharing your story today. Today I've realized I'm normal, but I'm going to be honest with you. I could never trust my employer to share my mental health with, because I think it would have a negative impact on my career. And more people came up to me saying virtually the same thing. So I decided at the beginning of 2017 that what I needed to do was to focus my energy on working with organizations to create kinder cultures in the workplace. And I've been very privileged in the last 3-4 years now to work with many of the leading brands around culture and trying to help them to create working environments where all employees felt safe to open up about their well-being. And in the last 6 months alone, I've been working with the likes of London Luton Airport, EasyJet, TUI, along with the Royal Navy and the BBC and the Law Society, and a huge diverse range of organizations. And I guess that's led me to meet people like Roland, where I'm actually working with Roland to support his employees in his business. One thing I want to share with you today is that I still battle with panic attacks every single day. They never ever go away. I'm doing 3 of these talks today, and before every single one of them, I think to myself, how embarrassing if I become breathless in front of all of you now. How awkward it would feel, because Roland's, he's put some faith in me today to talk to you guys. And if I can't deliver, how embarrassing is that going to be? The first time someone in the audience said to me, okay, David, you sound pretty authentic, but how do you get away with these panic attacks? Because I'll be honest with you, I spent 30 odd years in my career avoiding doing exactly what I'm doing now, delivering a talk. So yeah, someone said to me, how do you avoid them? And the first time I was asked that question, I didn't really know. I remember saying, there's a phrase we talk about a lot in the UK, that it's okay not to be okay. And perhaps I've truly embraced that phrase. I knew it wasn't the answer. Of course it wasn't the answer. And then as I kept being asked to do more and more of these talks, and after a while, I realized the impact it was having on my audiences and the subsequent impact on me. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I got involved in a graduate assessment day in London. This was about 3 years ago. And the graduates, as part of the assessment process, had to do a talk about something they were passionate about. And they were all brilliant. They were all absolutely brilliant. One of them talked about skiing. One talked about horses. One talked about Thailand. But then a young lady called Abigail stood up. And Abigail stood up and said, hi, everybody. My name's Abigail, and I've got bipolar. And for the first time that day, people put their mobile phones down. For the first time that day, people stopped whispering to the person next to them. For the first time that day, the room fell silent, and everyone hung on Abigail's every single word. And she was the first name they wrote down that they wanted to take on. Because what Abigail did, she inspired people by sharing her vulnerability. We naturally think it's weak to admit when we're not in a good place. We think it's weak to share our vulnerable side. But the irony is that you're more likely to keep the dressing room with you because you're inspiring people around you. I'm lucky to work with many senior people in lots of large organizations. And I surprise them by sharing that it's evidence-based now that a CEO is more likely to lose his job in the boardroom if he doesn't show his human side and share his vulnerabilities. So the reason I'm sharing this so upfront with you right at the beginning today is that if any of you are ever thinking, you know, I'm really worried about sharing my challenges with my mental health, you'll actually inspire people by if you do it in the right way. You know, people get absolutely, they fall in love with people. They get really inspired by people who've got the courage to actually talk about what's really going on. I was lucky to work with the Irish rugby team a couple of years ago, and I went over to Dublin, and they've got a rugby player who's 6'7" tall. And I went up to him quite aggressively and said, "Do you know what a real man is? Do you know what a real man is?" And he smiled and said, "I think you're going to tell me, David, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "A real man isn't a 6'7" rugby player. A real man is a man who can say, I'm not okay. A real man is a man who can say, I'm struggling. A real man is a man who can say, I need help. That's what a real man is." And very luckily for me, he didn't pick me up and throw me out the window. But these days, it's okay to talk about your mental well-being. You will inspire people when you share vulnerabilities. Anyway, back to the point I was making. How do I avoid panic attacks now? So I started thinking, is it because I'm helping people to share their vulnerabilities? No, it wasn't. I've dreamed of finding a cure. And I think cure is a really good word to use, because I will never, ever, ever be cured. As I say to you before every one of these talks, I think, what if I have a panic attack during this session? It took me till I was 54 years old to work it out, but I've worked it out. I now allow myself to have one. I say to myself, well, have one in front of Roland. Have one in front of all of you. Show you on camera what it looks like while I'm having one. Try and talk you through what it actually feels like to be having a panic attack. By allowing myself to have one, I'm being kind to myself. I'm showing myself compassion. So I think the reason I've largely overcome my panic attacks is I've discovered what they call self-compassion, which is all about being kinder to yourself. And I'm going to talk a lot in the next 15 minutes about the value of being kinder to yourself in your career. I spent far too long in my career, and I enjoyed a fair bit of success, being too hard on myself, putting myself under unnecessary pressure. We often talk about that phrase, we've got to raise the bar. Do you know what? What I was missing for 30 odd years, I needed to lower the bar. No one likes Mr. or Mrs. Perfect. You haven't got to get presentations bang on. People love to see vulnerability. They get inspired by it. So right up front early today, I'm saying to all of you with your careers, you don't have to be perfect. You don't always have to raise the bar. Sometimes lower the expectations on yourself and you'll actually achieve a lot more. Right, enough about me and my battles with panic attacks. Roland kindly did a poll earlier on about how many of us this year will suffer with some degree of poor mental health. You know, is it 1 in 1, 1 in 2, 1 in 4, 1 in 6? I'm going to surprise you all now with the content of the next five minutes or so. The first time I was ever asked to put a deck together about mental health, I sent it out to a few people and I said, please, can you be honest and send me some feedback? And they all came back with the same feedback. They said to me, David, you haven't got any statistics in there. And surely, whatever your subject matter, people like to see statistics. And I remember saying, take this in the right spirit. Every statistic I've ever read about mental health is complete bullshit. I said, no one knew about me for 36 years. How many more people are out there like me that nobody knows about? And in many ways, I've been proved absolutely right, because in the last few years, at least 1,000 people have contacted me, at least 1,000, to say that they would never share their mental health with anybody, let alone in work. They don't even share it with their own family. A very sad statistic for you, but 4 out of 10 suicides come as a complete shock to family and friends, which means that 40% of people who take their own life manage to mask it completely from everybody that loves them most. Supposedly, and I don't know where they get this one from, but for every 20 people who dial into work sick due to poor mental health, only one person tells the truth. The rest of you would rather say you've got diarrhea or a migraine or problems with children or problems with transport. So I've never changed my view that I'm very cynical about all statistics around mental health. Now, the most commonly used statistic in the UK certainly is that 1 in 4 of us every year is going to suffer with some degree of poor mental health. Well, I'm going to say to you today, I don't think it's 1 in 4. I'm going to share with you today, and not one of you put this in the poll, that it's every single one of us. We've all got health, both physical and mental. On some days, our physical health can be better. On some days, our mental health can be better. Part of the issue is that we have this perception that we've only got poor mental health if we're diagnosed by a professional with depression, or we're diagnosed by a professional with anxiety or schizophrenia. Well, I'm going to suggest that you don't have to be diagnosed by a professional to have challenges with your mental health. Now, I've been asked repeatedly over the last 3 months with this pandemic, how many of us are going to suffer? How many of us are going to have some challenges on some days? And again, I'm going to suggest it's everybody. I want you to be honest with me today and self-reflect at the moment. Have you experienced any of these whatsoever in the last 3 months? Have there been days when your energy levels have been a bit down? For whatever reason, you're feeling a bit knackered, you're feeling a bit lethargic and you can't get yourself going. Have there been days when you've been struggling to concentrate? You've got a lot going on in your mind. It may be that you're worried about your partner who's been furloughed. It may be that you're worried about your elderly parents who are being shielded because of their age. It may be you're worried about whether you send your children back to school or not, with all this debate about whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. You may be worried about your finances. You may be worried about your health, understandably, at the moment, or you may be worried about the viability of the company that you're working for because of this pandemic. And because of all those worries, you've got a lot going on in your mind and you're struggling to concentrate. A number of you may at the moment not be sleeping great. You may, for whatever reason, be waking up 1 or 2 times a night or waking up at 5 in the morning and can't get back to sleep. Well, everything I've talked about there is not great mental health. Whether you're not sleeping, your energy levels, your ability to concentrate, all your mental health is the health of your mind. And we all want healthier minds. And on some days, our minds could be healthier. One of the reasons I talk about 1 in 1 is once we start to talk about 1 in 1, we make everybody realize that this subject is about every one of us. When you talk about 1 in 4, you start to stigmatize the one. You look at 4 people and think, I wonder which one of those 4 people it is. Well, it's not one of those 4 people. It's every single one of us. And we all want healthier minds. Part of the problem is we've changed the meaning of the word mental to be a negative word that none of us want to associate with. I'll give you a really good example, because I'm sure all around Europe, we're very familiar with Google Images. Well, if you type into Google Images, the 2 words mental health, what do you think comes up on Google Images? I'll tell you what comes up. Images of someone like me with their head in their hands looking really sad. Every image would be of someone in distress. Dare I say it's someone looking suicidal. In contrast, if you put into Google Images physical health, you will see images of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Usain Bolt, Cristiano Ronaldo. Virtually every image is of a very fit athletic body. Why? Why is physical health positive and mental health negative? Some of you listening today, your physical health might not be great at the moment, might it? But your mind might be really sharp. So why is mental health regarded as negative and physical health regarded as positive? In there lies part of the problem why none of us want to associate with mental health. If I had my way, right now, I would eradicate the word mental from the dictionary forever. I would just talk about health and well-being. I would just talk about healthier minds, because we don't like the word mental. I'll give you one more fun but true story, just to really make this point once and for final today. I went through my phone recently, and I knew that I had a number of friends who've got a personal trainer. And I wanted to count how many I knew had a personal trainer. And I counted 7. 7 of my friends I know use a personal trainer. Why do I know that? It's because they don't shut up about it. They put it on social media. They tell me he comes around and I pay him 50 quid. I'm not knocking it, by the way. It's absolutely fantastic that they are investing in their health. The point I'm about to make, how many of my friends have a personal trainer for this thing in here called the mind? I wouldn't know, would I? Because that personal trainer is called a counselor or a therapist, and supposedly it's too embarrassing to talk about. You don't need to answer this question today, but what's more important, the health of your mind or developing bingo wings? I think we know the answer, don't we, Roland? We've got to get better at focusing on our mental well-being. When you're in a good place with your mental well-being, you're really motivated. You feel really great about yourself. That's when you start a diet. That's when you join a gym. That's when you go out running. You wouldn't need a personal trainer, you could argue, if your mental well-being was great, because you'd be so fired up yourself. So I'm sorry, everybody in the poll today. It's only my view. This is strictly my own view, but let's start thinking about 1-in-1, because you're going to make it easier for everyone to open up about this subject, because far too many people, trust me, and it's evidence-based, far too many people suffer in silence. And if we start changing people's thinking and mindset about mental well-being, we can all get ourselves mentally fitter, which can only be good for your careers. Careers, are a marathon. Careers take 30, 40 years. Hopefully we're moving away from the days where lots of companies almost got off on burning you out, because it's really important your career is there for the long term. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to talk you through a training program to become mentally fitter, to get you through your career with increased resilience. But I'll say to you up front, I'm not going to talk about anything that you don't know about already. I'm just going to give you, well, let's say I've been really lucky. For the last few years, I've been running workshops every week about well-being and mental health. And the most popular breakout group, without a doubt, is the session, which is where we design a training program to build our mental resilience. And that has given me fantastic insight as to what makes a difference. So I'm going to share that with you now. The first thing I want to talk to you about is sleep and the value of sleep to your mental well-being. Most of us have gone to bed one night, really worried about something, woken up the next day and thought, why was I worried about that? You were worried about it because you were tired. In fact, it was only me last night. I had a really long day yesterday. I got home last night. I was a little bit ratty. A few things were bothering me, but fortunately I had a good night's sleep. I woke up this morning and stuff that was bothering me yesterday isn't bothering me at all today. It was because I was tired at the end of a long day. Now, some of you are probably looking at me and saying, David, I'd love to get a good night's sleep, but I just can't sleep. I get that. I have nights myself where I don't sleep very well. However, what you've got to try and do is regulate your sleep. You've got to try and go to bed at roughly the same time every night. You've got to try and get up at roughly the same time every morning. And certainly don't stay up too late. How often, if we're honest with ourselves, do we think to ourselves, do you know what? I'm going to get an early night tonight. I'm going to be in bed by 10 o'clock, 10:30, and get a good night's sleep. And we end up watching a crap film on Netflix. And we think, I might as well get to the end of it now because I've been watching it already for an hour. And then we go on Facebook, then we go on social media. And the next thing we know, it's midnight, and we were promising ourselves an early night. So we've got to get better at trying to regulate our sleep. I appreciate all of you are different. Some of you need more sleep than others, but we know ourselves well, and you know how much sleep you need. The next thing I want to talk to you about is physical exercise. It's not surprising that governments around the world, even with strict rules on lockdown, have encouraged us to go out every day to get physical health. Because there's no doubt there's a very close relationship between your physical health and your mental health. Now, again, we're all different. To some of you, physical exercise might be a 5K run at lunchtime or a very intense workout in a gymnasium in the morning. To others of us, it's like a lovely walk around the streets where we live for half an hour, or a nice country park on a Sunday afternoon. But every single one of you needs physical exercise. And if you're watching this today and you're not getting any physical exercise at the moment, you need to. We need to get physical health and exercise very regularly. The next thing I want to talk to you about is me time. Me time is really, really important. And this is all about putting yourself first. The most important person in the world to love is not your mother, it's not your children, it's not your partner, it's yourself. The more you love you, the more you can love people around you. All of you will have been on an airplane, and you know that they say if the oxygen mask come down, you put yours on first, even if you've got children with you. Well, you should all be putting your oxygen mask on first every day at the moment, particularly during this pandemic, because how are you going to look after people around you in your life, your colleagues, your family, your children, your parents, if you become ill? So it's actually selfish not to put yourself first in life. I'll give you an example of somebody who was having a very good career. Nothing fazed them in their career. Nothing stressed them out. They were having a good time. But they were underestimating the value of me time. And for the first time in their life 3 years ago, they felt they were failing at something. And what they felt they was failing at was being a dad. They'd just become a father for the first time. And because they were very busy, a very busy person, I found out that when they first became a dad, they wanted to create more time for mum and baby. So they gave up 3 things. They gave up their Arsenal season ticket, they gave up running, and they gave up car rallying. And we reckon within a few months, they developed postnatal depression because they'd stopped looking after themselves. We got them back to watching football and running and car rallying again. And within a few months, they were in a much better place. And 3 years on now, they've got 3 children and they're a very happy dad, and life is good again. They will never underestimate again the value of me time. So within your careers, if you're getting exceptionally busy, you're running around doing things for other people, you're a manager and your career's really taking off, you have got to find time to do things for you. It's absolutely critical. And the next story I want to talk to you about to do with looking after your well-being, I call it playtime. I'm fairly sure that in every country in Europe, every country in the world, we give children playtime at school. So I'm going to tell you a story that happened in a school in the UK last year, where a child suggested to the teachers that the teachers should have playtime too. And the school thought it was a brilliant idea. So a few weeks later, the teachers were told, you're going out into the playground to have playtime. And the children were told, you're not getting playtime, the teachers are getting it instead. Now, you know what kids are like. They thought that was awesome. They thought it was brilliant. But this story has a sad ending, because when the day arrived, the kids were really excited and they rushed to the windows to get the best views of the teachers having playtime. But they were left really disappointed because the teachers stood there like boring adults, just sort of chatting to each other. And what the kids wanted to see was the teachers running around the playground, chasing each other, having a laugh. We give kids playtime for 4 reasons. 1, it's a break between 2 pieces of work to re-energize yourself. Secondly, it's social interaction. Thirdly, it's fresh air and sunshine. And lastly, again, it's physical exercise. Now, when your careers start to take off and we become adults, you still need playtime. You still need to give yourself breaks between 2 pieces of work to re-energize yourself. You still need social interaction. You still need fresh air. You still need physical exercise. And I'm going to suggest that some of you may not be getting enough playtime in your lives at the moment. And it's really important to get playtime. And just a few more things about your well-being overall. Give yourself treats. We're living in very uncertain times, but give yourself things to look forward to in your diary. My wedding was cancelled this April because of this pandemic, but we've already put it in the diary for next year. So we've got a date and something to focus on to look forward to. Sometimes you've got people in your life who drain you of energy and you have to make a really tough decision. You may have somebody you're working with, it may be a closer relationship outside of work, and it's not good for you and it's affecting your well-being. And you have to make a tough decision to say, I'm going to have that person less or not at all in my life, or a group of people. And that can be really difficult to do. But again, you've got to put yourselves first. overall, I'm going to bring that word kindness back again to just sum up what I've been saying today. Kindness isn't a word that I hardly ever heard in my entire career. Now, I'm probably the oldest person on this webinar today, and I'm at the latter end of my career. But trust me, I wish I'd have been kinder to myself throughout my career. I wish as a manager, I'd been even kinder to people around me, because kindness gives you energy. It gives people around you energy, really drives engagement that is critical in your careers. And so the stuff I've talked about around sleep and physical exercise and me time, it may not sound that critical, but trust me, it is. I said earlier, your career is a marathon, not a sprint. We all know in a marathon, you can hit a wall at 20 miles. Now, most of you are in the early stages of your marathon. You may think you're absolutely fine at the moment, but if you don't treat yourself with kindness throughout your career, you may well hit the wall at some point, and your career may get diverted away from where you wanted it to be. So Roland, thank you for the opportunity to, I'll come to the end of my formal chat here today, but obviously naturally very open for questions and to discuss and debate anything that I've talked about here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. As always, I love listening to you speak, and even the things that I might have heard when you've spoken to my guys, just hearing it again helps me to, I guess, to refocus a bit. Interestingly, I was too late to bed last night, and even today, I can, I know it and I can feel it. And then you talk to yourself and you put yourself down, thinking, I've just got to go to bed earlier, and I shouldn't be. But actually, you've got to be less tough on yourself sometimes, and and go from there. But we've got a question from a comment from in there actually. So interested to get your thoughts. That she said interesting points, but there's a difference between worrying about something specific like a job loss and the general anxiety that someone might have when you worry for no reason, and more that mental health issues in there from that point of view. And she's saying obviously she'd still recommend getting a diagnosis and medical advice for that. Do you feel there's a difference where someone's worrying about something specific compared to sort of general mental well-being?
Ian's made a really good point, and it's very important to say, just like your physical health, there comes a point when you do need to seek professional advice. And if your anxieties are becoming irrational, and all the things I'm talking about around sleep and exercise are making no difference at all, I would always encourage people to seek a diagnosis and professional medical support. Obviously, a lot of my work is in the corporate world, and I'm probably 95% of people. I'm just encouraging them generally to look after their well-being better, to avoid, having to get officially diagnosed with depression, anxiety, or so on. But at the same time, and it's such a good point, Inna, there comes a time when if you're worried and you can't sleep and you're not feeling great and it's all feeling irrational, yes, please seek support from a professional and get a proper diagnosis. Really good point, Inna.
I mean, look, if anyone else has got any questions, and I know sometimes, I know David with my guys, when he got us together, he asked us in the chat to say how we were feeling today, what sort of between 1 and 10, where and all of my guys put 7 and 8, and David said that's a very normal thing to happen where everybody puts 7 or 8, because in front of peers and in front of a group, people don't want to put 3 because the stigma of I guess negativity around mental health, and that would highlight them as not feeling great. So it might be that people don't want to perhaps ask questions today, directly on here, and I know David, I'm sure, would be happy if anyone wanted to, drop him an email or if you've got any questions afterwards, by all means, please, drop him details, and I can put you in touch. David's on LinkedIn, which I've obviously encouraged you all now to use. So, please do ask him any questions. I think, interestingly, actually, one thing I'm just going to quickly reshare my screen, if you can. All right, bear with me just one sec. I am hoping. Can you see that? Can you see David's face? I hope. David, can you see yourself on that?
I can see myself.
Yeah, good, good, good. So next week is two things about next week. Actually, next week's going to be 2 hours earlier because unfortunately I've got an event that I can't miss at this time. So we're going to be doing this at 12 o'clock British Standard Time, and we will obviously do that on Zoom. But next week's around on meeting techniques and communication, how to have impact. And I think what leads on really well from what David's been saying today is people have a lot of anxiety around meetings, around maybe presentations, as David was saying himself, around how to communicate. They get worried when they're in the spotlight, and so I think next week hopefully we'll help move on from here and understanding that actually making mistakes in presentations, making mistakes in meetings, showing vulnerability and showing that no one's perfect is not a problem. And I think what I would take into next week's webinar that we'll do is don't be too hard on yourself. We've tried to do these webinars in an order that makes sense, and next week is very much that. I'll try and talk to you about what to do with meetings, how to make sure that you really you're organized and think it through, and how to deliver things. But ultimately it sometimes people can worry about it too much, and so I think take David's advice on don't be too hard on yourself and be willing to make a mistake. Understand that's everybody does. It's part of the part of life, part of the process, and you've got to laugh it off and go with it. So Gabby's just got a question here. Any techniques or suggestions you can share on how not to be too hard on yourself on top of lowering expectations, David?
Well, it's a good question. As I spent most of my career being too hard on myself. Certainly the moment I've started being really open about my own well-being, I was really surprised. Even friends and family who said to me, David, why didn't you share that with me 10 years ago? Because I suffer exactly the same. And I had people around me who were equally putting themselves under huge pressure. And by talking about this sort of stuff, it's and I think I'd always encourage if you shared your own anxieties or the pressures you put yourself under, you'll realize everyone does exactly the same thing. When you go to a meeting in the workplace, you're sitting around the big table and you've all got to introduce yourself. And I used to sit there sort of quite nervous about doing that and wondering what people were thinking about what I was saying. Everyone's doing the same thing, whether it's a CEO or whether it's someone a lot more junior. And we all go through similar stuff. And if I could have not laughed at myself, but been more amused by myself throughout my career and shared what I was going through, I think I would have achieved more. I think the more, I call my business breaking the silence, because I obviously broke my silence after so many years. But I think the stigma of mental health is the wall of silence around the whole subject. And the more we can talk about ourselves and the pressures we put ourselves under, I think you'd hear everyone else goes through similar stuff, and we'd all get a bit more relaxed, particularly the more senior level you get. I always assume people at a senior level must be amazing and really talented, and I was a bit in awe of them. And but without sounding disrespectful, when I got there, they were just normal people going through with the same sort of worries about kids and parents and in lots of cases what people thought of them. So I just think the more we open up this subject, hopefully we can lower expectations of ourselves generally, with the irony being, when you lower expectations, by the way, you often achieve more. We know, I don't play golf, so I don't know why I'm using this analogy, but if you were standing on a golf tee and you put yourself under huge pressure and was really quite tense, you probably wouldn't hit the ball as far as when you're relaxed. And I think the more you relax and can find ways to relax yourself in life, the more you'll achieve, and you'll go a lot further, because you won't burn out either. You'll be far more relaxed.
Yeah, I also actually, I think with The thing I'd say is, obviously, with my job now, I used to work in big corporate recruitment agency in the sort of largest specialist agency in the UK, and I ran London for them, and that was during the 2008 recession. So the running London was quite a difficult job at the time. And I've, and then in my job now, I've met a lot of senior people, CEOs of hotel groups and whatever else, and they are absolutely the same as you and me. They're normal people. Some of them, yes, very talented and very clever, but actually there is quite a lot of luck in career paths, and I've met a number of people that have got to certain places through sheer luck, being in a certain place at a certain time. They made a certain jump, or someone spotted them, or they happened to make a move where other things outside of their control meant it worked in their favor. So I think you have to, and I think what I've realized with my career as well, and I do put myself under a lot of pressure, both with my business and where we want to go and how we're doing and how I'm doing. And probably too much so, because my golf is rubbish. So, but I definitely think from the techniques and suggestions on that is, we mentioned earlier on in these webinars about writing where you want to get to for your career path, sort of understand what you want to do and have it written down so you can see what you're doing. I think what you've also got to realize with that is it's not a straight line. And so the technique, it's not a technique, but it's more an understanding, I think, of running a business is the same as your career. It doesn't just go on a nice smooth path. If you Google growth plans or growth curves, you'll see that most companies, very few companies are an Amazon or a Google, where they just go in a nice straight increasing line. That most of them, they're hockey sticks, where they go up and then they dip and then they go up and they dip, and they go through phases. And their career is exactly the same. You will have good times where things progress, and then you might just have a boss that you don't get on with, and things dip slightly, and then you have to move, and then they go up again. And so don't be too hard on yourself by understanding that life is not a smooth path. Understand what you're trying to do. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, because things you can influence what goes on, but you have to understand it doesn't always go well, and that as long as you can manage that thought process and how you go about that, then it will help with how you think about things. That, I suppose, would be my advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, look, next week, as I said, we'll talk about the meeting techniques and communication. As I said, it's 2 hours earlier in the day, so I'll let you know. I think, look, there's a lot of people who are back at work now and whatever, so I do appreciate attending next week or whatever might be more difficult. I'd love you all still to be there. I think next week is really interesting and important, because in the job of revenue management, you will be in meetings with senior people. You will be having to back your own judgments. You'll be having to influence senior management as to why they should listen to you, making the decisions you're making around pricing and perhaps marketing, promotions, and whatever the case may be. So next week is a good one. It's possible, based on numbers, we might not do the how to write your CV and things the week after. What I would say with that one is, if you are wanting help and thoughts on putting a CV together, if we don't do that, then I am more than happy to Zoom however many of you individually, or even arrange a Zoom to talk it through. So we might well do it. We're just going to see how the numbers go, but next week's definitely happening 2 hours earlier. And I just want to say, look, David, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, as always. Love hearing you speak. And if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to drop me or David an email or LinkedIn invite, etc., etc. So thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, and have a great week. Bye all.